Thank you, and thanks for everybody for giving us the chance to try to go through this. Let's kick it off. Let's not delay anymore. I'm very excited to introduce Mike as our next guest for our webinar series. Mike is the CEO of Ada. Ada is a no-code AI-powered platform. It's used by many brands such as Facebook, Shopify, Zoom, Medium, Mailchimp, etc. It's offering a personalized customer experience via a conversational chatbot. In other words, it's an intelligent bot that is able to interact with the customers directly. Mike, welcome. I would love you if you can take a moment to share with our audience what Ada is and how our organization is using your platform.
Sure. Yeah, great to be here and excited to talk data with everybody, as well as customer experience tech. Ada is a automation platform that enables brands to interact with their customers at scale. I started Ada a while ago because I was working on a completely different company that was growing quite quickly, and I started observing us pursuing this sort of conventional customer service strategy of figuring out how to talk to your customers less the bigger you get. And it struck me that that was pretty backwards because that data was incredibly valuable to us. I felt actually that it was increasingly valuable the bigger our company became. And I set out to solve that problem with my co-founder, David. And we spent a lot of time in the contact center as agents and slowly built software that improved our own productivity and enabled the brands we work for to actually talk to their customers more, not less, as they scaled. And that's really what resulted in Ada. Ada makes powerful ML easy to use, and we enable our brands to triple, quadruple, and sometimes even more the number of interactions they're having with their customers. They do that to drive very specific business outcomes and to learn from their customers at scale. So lots of themes that are very relevant to our conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, I've been in businesses where customer support was seen as a drag, as a cost, and ways to talk less to the customers and reduce the cost has been a strategical initiative, which was funny. You've been an entrepreneur for most of your career, and you've started a number of other businesses prior to launching Ada. Can you share what made you want to build businesses and how your prior experience, you already shared how your prior experiences led to Ada, but how it led to starting yet another business?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm someone who's I'm very motivated, probably most motivated by learning new things. I sort of fell in love with company building at a young age because I associated the difficulty of a task with the afforded learning opportunity. And I think we all have different challenges, different things that we consider hard. For me, the act of building a company was very hard. And so I sort of became obsessed with learning how to build companies, and thus, having the privilege of learning new things along the way. I've started a few different companies over the years, but it's really been Ada that's achieved and continues to grow at a very rapid pace, and it has achieved some very exciting scale. We're now automating billions of customer interactions for some of the fastest growing brands in the world. And I still wake up out of bed in the morning not knowing what I'm doing. So that's what I love about my job, and I think that's what motivates so much of our team. It's solving hard problems and figuring out how to solve them quickly.
That's awesome. I can relate to the comment you just made, not knowing what you're doing. It's a constant learning and growth as an entrepreneur. Were there any signs? What made you think that Ada was going to be a successful business when you compare it with your earlier ventures? Anything in particular that gave you confidence in the early days?
Yeah, so I kind of touched upon this a little bit earlier. I'll give you more detail. I joined 7 different customer service teams as an agent in the early days of exploring how automation might be able to improve the customer experience. And David and I answered thousands and thousands of customer service inquiries manually across phone, live chat, email. This was definitely the low point of my entrepreneurial career because we were working literally 77 jobs at the same time, and we were we were handling the most repetitive inquiries that these businesses were getting in their support departments. So it was pretty monotonous. We observed, I'd say, 3 trends. The first thing we observed was that 30% or more of the inquiries we were responding to were repetitive and mundane. The second thing we learned was that the agent experience of responding to these customer service inquiries that we and our colleagues were living in, the software experience, was highly negative. In short, we didn't feel like the software was designed to improve our productivity and to support us. It felt like we were fighting against it. And the third thing we witnessed is that we all wanted to offer a better experience to our customers. All our colleagues were like, we should be able to talk to our customers like we talk to our friends. Looks like we're live on video.
Nice.
But,
awesome.
but we want to be able to talk to our customers like we talk to our friends. And that meant turning on messaging and live chat channels and texting relationships with customers. And that was always vetoed by the brand because it was viewed as running counter to the cost saving paradigm, the goal of reducing customer contact, not increasing it. There are very manual origins to our automation company. So we kept our heads down, fought the temptation to write a single line of code, and essentially became amongst the most productive agents on each one of these teams. And we saw churn go down. It turns out if you respond to customers more quickly, they like your business more, they're less likely to leave. We saw agent attrition fall, which was much more surprising. Turns out that if you remove the repetitive nature of the customer service job, what you're left with is something far more intellectually stimulating, far more challenging, and actually for the business, the conversations that are left over tend to be far more revenue generating in nature. And in short, people like their jobs more. Our colleagues loved that we were taking the simple stuff off their plates because they were left with hard problems to solve, which meant that 45% annual turnover rate that we see across the enterprise and customer service departments fell quite precipitously. The third thing we learned was that there was so much value in this conversation data.
Yeah.
There were sales opportunities and product insights. And most of this data was not being leveraged in any sort of company decision-making. We felt like it should have been bubbled up to leadership. We felt like it should have been informing multiple departments' approaches to their annual planning, to their day-to-day decision-making, all the above. But this gold mine that it felt like we were sitting on wasn't really recognized or appreciated within the companies we worked for. And it turns out that's true for the average company around the world. I'm giving you a long answer to get to your question. We knew Ada was working because we set out to build technology that replicated the manual behaviors we were engaged in as agents. We took an ML approach to that because we had access to so much data. And then we focused on making those ML techniques easy to use because so many of our colleagues were non-technical. The people who knew the customer best were not technical.
Yeah. And
it's when we figured out how to make these ML techniques simple enough to use and empowered the customer-facing teams to create with that we started to see some very exciting results. And we knew it worked because we didn't get fired. We were our managers actually preferred what we were doing in an automated capacity, and we're so delighted with the impact on the team and the results that it was a win-win-win for every stakeholder involved: the customer, the employer, and our colleagues, the agents. And the last 4 years of Ada have really been about increasing the capabilities and sophistication of our automation and delivering it to more and more brands who can create even crazier and more valuable experiences with our technology.
Yeah, that's awesome. I bet the previous customer support software you had experience with didn't use AI. So can you go a little deeper how Ada is using AI to improve the customer experience?
Sure. Yeah, we use AI in a couple different ways. The core of Ada is around is our natural language understanding engine. We're very good at understanding the intent behind a customer's inquiry or behind a observed customer behavior. And in other words, it's an intent classification model or models that we've developed. That's the primary, the core of Ada's ML. We also apply ML in a variety of other ways on the analysis side of things. We do a lot of unsupervised learning on our conversational data sets, which enable brands to learn new things about their customers that they weren't able to before. And we're actually developing, the third area is on the workflow management side. Many of our brands have built automation workflows in the order of hundreds with Ada. And we're increasingly automating how those workflows are managed so that the business users who live inside Ada are spending most of their time in a strategic capacity and not in a manual workflow management capacity. And so there are natural language generation techniques that we are employing to improve that experience as well.
Is it a fair statement that Ada covers more of the common, repetitive, mundane interaction, if you will? So the more intellectually stimulating and strategic interaction is on the agent?
No, not anymore, actually. In the early days, we focused on what we refer to as basic inquiries. And these days, brands use Ada to automate actually very complex inquiries as well. So these are tasks and processes that are being automated using Ada, not just simple answers. We see workflows that will process payments, that will make a change on behalf of a customer on their account, that will pull data from one system and create a ticket in another for you, or that will proactively reach out to a customer and encourage specific behavior, all of which is performed automatically without the need for an agent to click around in an admin panel on your behalf while you're on hold, which I think we're all accustomed to. The net effect is that our brands have enabled their teams their automation teams to build much more sophisticated workflows that drive revenue in addition to efficiencies, and empower their customer facing teams with far more context on the customer interaction so that they're able to serve their customers better, not only in a reactive manner, but in a proactive one.
Awesome. Yeah, so hopefully that ties into the evolution of your technology stack for the technical audience. I'm sure they're curious if you encounter any technical challenges, how were you building your solution with data? What was the evolution of the technology stack, particularly to enable some of the newer interaction you're mentioning?
Sure. Yeah. So there's probably a couple different evolutions that are important to highlight. The first is, the development of our own machine learning models. And then the next one I'll talk about is the transition from answer automation to task and process automation. On the former, in the very early days of Ada, really when we were very much in experimental mode, we were leveraging third-party NLU engines to classify the intent of incoming customer inquiries. And that meant we were using technology like Google's, Facebook's. We were very familiar with the Amazon intent classification APIs. And we had some success with those in the early days, and really it taught us what those technologies are good at and where there are areas that they stand to improve. We ended up developing our own model after we started to understand the constraints that the existing ones pose, and we trained it initially on customer service data from across the web. Millions and millions of customer service help articles, and so the data set that we were starting with was far more tuned to the types of conversations that we were automating for our brands, and we started to see better results. The second part of that evolution was we developed an innovative way of enabling a brand to get very rapid results from Ada's global machine learning model, while simultaneously developing even even stronger results from their own conversational data. And what that has resulted in is a unique architecture around how Ada understands your customers' questions and your customers' behavior. When you work with Ada, you're actually tapping into a global machine learning model that's now made up of the collective conversational data set of billions and billions of customer interactions from around the world. That allows you to quickly out of the box launch something that's very intelligent. And the speed at which you're able to do that is something our clients love. You can get up and running in days using Ada. You're simultaneously developing, as you automate more and more interactions with Ada, your own local machine learning model that's trained exclusively on your customer data. And a prediction that comes from Ada is actually dynamically weighted between your global and local model. And that's how we get even stronger and stronger results over time. What that translates into is our clients will start with automating roughly 40% of their conversations using our automation within the first 30 days of working with us. But over time, within the first 6 months, we often see our clients eclipse 80%, in some cases 90% of all interactions being fully automated. And so that's been a big part of our it was a major evolution in our tech stack to be able to facilitate that. The second part was the evolution from our answer automation to our task automation, and that really meant enabling Ada to be a truly modular integrations platform. And we have hundreds of integrations into different data systems so that you can track a package automatically from a Shopify API or a Convey API, that you can launch Ada in any channel, whether it's on SMS or Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or Instagram. The ability to tap into other systems and deploy your automation in other channels is something we've invested a lot in, and it's been a big part of our partnership success. And it's a huge part of our partnership investments moving forward.
Yeah, I can certainly see coming from the place of integrating a lot of data sources for customers and helping them make sense of the data coming from various sources integrated together. I can see the value of having a lot of connectors and a lot of models that enable you to accelerate that. Let me switch a little bit to challenges. Obviously, data is at the core of Ada. Any technical or business challenges as you were building the product as it relates to data, whether internally or with the product? And how does Ada integrate when it comes to data with customers' data and vice versa, customers using Ada's data on their end?
Yeah, sure. We integrate very deeply, and many of our clients are large enterprise brands who have their own data warehouses or data lakes, and we have a great data API that allows you to pipe all your data from Ada into whatever system you like. At the same time, we also enable our brands to leverage their existing customer experience data into Ada right away. So many of our clients have built a large repository, for example, of help center articles they'd like to take advantage of. We have a product called Smart Search, which allows you to, out of the box, essentially tap into that historical knowledge that you've developed and present it in a conversational experience. That's been something that's been very, very valuable for our brands to get started quickly and to understand which of this content's actually valuable. What's useful about this content? What business result is it driving? And that relates to Pierre, your question. I think that the subjectiveness of customer experience is something that we did encounter in the earlier days. We actually found dissolve quite quickly through our focus on connecting automation to real business results, meaning cost savings and revenue generation, hard dollars. I would argue many of the customer experience metrics that teams prior to deploying an automation strategy tend to measure their success around are really end up being proxies. In some cases, they're quite large abstractions, let's say, from revenue or savings. And I think the extent to which you can get closer to revenue, the better. That's where we've seen the most success, and our brands get the best results. And it leads them to think about their customer experience in a whole new way. The minute you get closer to revenue, is the minute that you start to abandon many of these, I would argue, antiquated definitions around customer experience. When you know how much you're able to increase your customer lifetime value via each interaction that you're facilitating with your customer base, you start to realize you want more of those customer interactions and not fewer of them.
Were there any cultural challenges in making people to move from managing their proxies to managing the real metrics?
Oh, definitely. I'd say they're one of the probably most exciting things about Ada to this day is when our clients create their first ACX teams. These are automated customer experience teams, and these are typically teams that are initially seeded with members of the contact center. So a brand will promote the top 2 or 3 agents out of their contact center and promote them into this new automation role in the ACX team, where they're living inside Ada and they're managing automated workflows, learning from them, improving them over time. And that's a huge cultural shift, one that we see so much career excitement around because it's a new role. It's one that is we're seeing really explode. I think there's going to be an increasing number of ACX manager positions that we'll all be congratulating people for on LinkedIn if you're not already. And I think it sort of paves the way to the future of what customer experience is and how it's becoming increasingly analytical and data driven. So that's one cultural shift that we've observed, and I'm excited to see continue.
That's interesting. Yeah, I get reminded of a science fiction novel I read from one of my favorite authors, Stephen Baxter, where he describes a software engineer developer of the future sitting in a room with AI and babysitting and nursing and almost acting as a psychologist, communicating with the AI to let the AI solve a problem as opposed to the engineer writing the code to solve the problem directly. Right?
Yeah, I think I love that too. I think that's actually a great metaphor. In my view, most software today, I think we can think of as really being like SaaS 1.0. Yeah. It's built around human labor. Pick a software app. The amount of time that you spend clicking and dragging and performing the equivalent of digital manual labor is immense. And what we're transitioning to is the SaaS 2.0 world, where the human labor is being promoted to a far more strategic role, and the core of the software is an ML model or multiple ML models, and that's a really exciting future, I think, because it's only now that we're beginning to really see the impact, I think, of software on our productivity and our creativity as humans. We saw the digitization. We put things in the cloud, but the human's still at the core. We're about to see the human promoted to a far more strategic role with ML at the core, and I think that's going to be a very exciting future for our relationship with software.
That's a great time to my next question, which is about humans and roles in data roles, specifically data scientists, data engineers. You've hired many people in roles like that. I'm curious, we're still not in the SaaS 2.0 world that you're describing. We're in the transition. Which role was the most challenging to hire for, and how have you been able to help people be successful in that role, particularly given what you're describing, the transition to ML being at the core of the work?
I think the single biggest challenge is finding people who understand, how do I put this? There's a tendency, I believe, amongst we as technologists, especially those of us who are really excited about machine learning technologies, to assume that ML is inherently valuable. There's like this intrinsic utility to artificial intelligence or the associated technology underneath that umbrella. And I think the single biggest challenge is for leaders and hiring managers to recognize that the most impactful ML engineers in particular are those that don't believe that. It's those that are focused on applied machine learning and who recognize that the technology is only valuable to the extent to which it replicates or scales some manual process in the physical world. It's those that are able to connect the technology to the real world impact and are first and foremost prioritizing the real world impact that have the biggest impact on your company and your organization. That's the single biggest thing that we've learned and that I've personally observed. And I think that's really, really important because, there's some very intellectually stimulating and exciting applications of ML that are highly creative, but don't actually result in, real world impact. And that's great. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in those explorations when it comes to moving the needle and transitioning your company from a SaaS 1.01 to a SaaS 2.01, or from a company that goes from being scared of customer interactions to craving them. I think it requires a deep prioritization of the real world impact that you're looking to materialize. And I think that's something that can be coached personally. But it's something I think to be aware of for all the hiring managers in the room who are looking to hire data scientists and ML researchers.
That's very interesting. So what I'm hearing you say is that you hire, say, a data engineer, they somehow have high expectations of ML itself being the goal, right? Making
That's
the
right.
best ML, as opposed to being the tool that you use to solve a real business problem.
That's exactly right. And what's interesting is that when you think business problem first or customer problem first, ML, there are many ML techniques that actually, are not the ideal solution. Like there are many regular expressions that would solve a problem more efficiently and better for the customer. And that should be prioritized. It's about the solving the problem, not about the tool of choice. Now the toolkit, the ML toolkit is rapidly expanding, which is very exciting. But if you think tool first and not problem first, I think you run the risk of not applying ML in the right way, and you run the risk of applying it probably too often.
Yeah, when you mentioned the ML toolkit is rapidly expanding, you touched on my next question, which is your view on the state of data science, machine learning today. Are you finding technologies that feel mature enough? How much room there is for them to evolve and handle the needs of businesses?
Yeah, I think we there are mature technologies, and there are many that are in the process of maturing that are, I think, have high potential. If you look at Cohere's APIs, for example, or Open.ai's APIs, there's some exciting indications of the future of natural language of generative models and natural language generation more broadly. I think that the takeaway for me, the most important point for me, is that every company will be an ML company in the next 10 years. Like the idea of there being ML companies today, is it really a temporary banner or label that we're putting on businesses? In the same way that being a web company or a digital company was temporary. Every company is a software company or web company today. And if you're not, you're not really a successful company if you don't have a digital presence. And if digital isn't a core part of what you do, you're probably not succeeding. So for in most industries, let's say, I don't want to make it too blanket of a statement. So I think the idea that ML is a specialized skill set and there's a handful of ML companies that provide this technology is something that will melt away pretty quickly. And what we'll be left with is a recognition that ML is an inherent part of all business. And for that reason, it needs to be, I think, all the more reason that it's viewed through the lens of how does this technology solve the problems better than the current tools I'm using to solve those problems.
But it's important to decide what's the problem you're trying to solve. You're not trying to solve technical problems. You're trying to solve business and customer problems.
That's exactly right. And that's where I think it's very dangerous if there's any folks in the room who have, departments in their company that are labs or R&D arms, or, they have an AI project or something. I think there's a tendency to focus too much on the tool and not enough on the problem in those environments. That's the downside to them. And so it's it's important that again, that the increasing number of ML tools that are at our disposal are also considered alongside other tools that are not ML in nature, and the percentage of them that will be ML tools that we all either invent ourselves in our case or deploy from elsewhere, will grow over time. That's what it means to become. That's what I mean by every company will be an ML company, but that's not a new. That shouldn't be a new process or a new organization entirely that is making that decision. In my opinion, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, we are still a bit of on the ground level when it comes to data and engineering practices around data, operational practices around data. There's the emerging concept of marrying agile and DevOps, applying it to data, called data ops, and the discipline of data engineering. So I'm wondering, do you have a view of the importance of that and the success of typical data science, data analytics project?
Yeah, I do. I think like we're in its infancy, and I think very few people know how to do it well. So, the fact that Infostrux is providing data engineering as a service, I think is needed right now. I think that's a really, really important skill set to have in your organization. I think it's one that's also changing like very quickly. Like I think for us at Ada, there's been a big question around, what given a growing data set that we have and the growing types of data that we have, the way we think about data engineering needs to evolve. And it's put a premium for us on aligning our product roadmap and the vision for how our product's evolving to the types of data and the amount of data that we expect to have over the years ahead. And it's almost a skill set around, resourcing effectively and resource planning that I think is important to connect to your data engineering practice. It's a skill set, as you know, that's challenging to develop, which is why it's great to work with partners who can support that. And I think it's one that you probably can't be thinking about too early.
Yeah, I found that in previous business where we did cloud engineering, DevOps engineering, hiring software engineers and teaching them DevOps was a better strategy than hiring people who claim to be DevOps without the experience of cloud, without the experience of software engineering. So I'm assuming we're going to see the same happening in the data, training software engineers to work with the data and love working with the data would be the way to do it. Let's talk a little bit about our partner, Snowflake. You are using their data cloud platform. Can you talk about what made you pick their technology and any strengths and functionality that stood out for you?
Yeah, I think for us, most important consideration was scale. We're, as I mentioned, powering billions and billions of customer interactions, and having a partner like Snowflake who can support that scale and continue to scale subsequently as we triple or quadruple the number of interactions per brand who uses Ada was just super, super important. So having that guaranteed availability was a really, really key part of our decision set. And I think that for us in particular too, like, we are a B2B2C company, meaning that if you're a brand who uses Ada, you're deploying Ada in all your customer facing channels. And so if you have, millions or hundreds of millions of customers, like many of our brands do, that has a significant impact on our software's, the way we approach reliability and scale for Ada software. And so that certainly was a key part of our consideration.
Yeah, I'm curious, there's a question I want to address from the audience, but are you leveraging, or do you see leveraging the presence in different regions and abilities like data sharing as you scale Ada?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, and that's an important part of, our many of our brands are international. And so I think, for us to meet the needs of our brands from a compliance and regulatory perspective, I think, that's a really, really important part of our future, as is like from a redundancy perspective too.
Yeah, you want to meet the clients where they are. Let's address the question from the audience. I'll read that and you can answer.
Sure.
Business customer always say they're willing to embrace new technologies and using new tools, but when it comes to the final decision, they have many doubts and move slowly, especially for big companies in traditional industries. What strategies the ADA team use to clear customers' doubts and help them make decisions?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Kevin. For us, we really partner with our prospective brands or prospective clients who use our software, especially in the early days, to drive results as quickly as possible. So that's been really key for us to demonstrate the value of automation and to help our champion improve that case inside their organization. So it came really down. It's come down for us most to time to results. We've also really made it easy to prove the value, prove the business case. I'll give you an example. Let's say, I'm not sure what company you're from, Kevin, but let's say that you're you run a SaaS organization, and you're looking to understand the value of automation. You're exploring perhaps figuring out how you can increase the your amount of customer contact. But perhaps in the first year, you're focused on improving your efficiency. You want to talk to more customers, but you don't want to increase your spend on the total number of the size of your customer experience organization. So with ADA, you're going live with our team and our technology, and you're live within days, and within the first month of deploying, you're automating 30% of all inquiries, and you can see the exact results the impact that's had on your business in terms of the savings you've achieved and the impact on your customer experience. And what's interesting is we've worked a lot around helping you control the size of that deployment. So if you don't want to deploy it to start in front of your entire customer base, we literally give you a dial so that you can control the percentage of your customer base that you've deployed your automation to. And so giving those tools the flexibility to constrain the deployment initially, prove the results quickly, and expand it as you go has been a really key part of our partners' success. And it's something a framework I'd encourage you to think about if you're looking to deploy automation or another technology in yourself. Josh, maybe we can go to your question. It sounds like Josh
he's touching on. I usually ask my guests a question to make predictions. You made a prediction: every company will be an ML company within the next 10 years. So Josh is asking, do you think ML will be a key component of a company's IP? Where do you think there is an opportunity for ML models to be shared across companies?
Great question. So I think that the models themselves will probably not be part of the average company's IP. I think the data will. And so in the same way that we have most companies have they view their CRM as their one of the most coveted data sources they have within their organization. I think we can think about that being really expanded quite significantly. And there's almost an intelligence CRM that every organization will have, and that'll house all the data that has trained their machine learning models. Now, to your question about whether those models will be shared, the data behind them will be shared. Yes, I believe they will be. And I think there's a real opportunity here. Not all the data will be, like the PII will be scrubbed, and there'll be a premium moving forward on these different data share agreements. What types of data are brands comfortable sharing with each other? Which types of data are they not? And of course, from a consumer and privacy perspective, what is too risky to share and what needs to be protected? This isn't a growing area of opportunity, I think, for more and more innovation, but an important part of the way that brands are going to interact. It also changes the strategic landscape and the way we think about partnerships moving forward. Today, if you think of an average partner organization, you think about co-selling relationships and reselling relationships, maybe an OEM tech alliance relationship or of the equivalent. Increasingly, we're going to see more data sharing relationships where your intelligence will be enhanced by sharing data with a partner organization, and perhaps vice versa. And that is going to be an interesting way that the data plays an increasing role in between organizations. I think that's one of probably a bunch of different implications of every company being an ML company.
I'm glad to hear you're ambitious. You're optimistic about it. I'm a little more pessimistic about sharing. I've seen a lot of examples where organizations suffer from trying to protect and control and silo everything and not share even information, let alone technology or insights and stuff like that. This is particularly problematic in the public sector, where you take like municipalities, each of them has their own IT, each of them makes their own decisions for simple things like where do they run their email, right? There's no shared service, and every attempt for a shared service has been a challenge for a long time. So I'll latch onto your optimism, and hopefully you're right that there'll be more sharing, and maybe ML is the reason why companies end up sharing more. But I'm a little more pessimistic on that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it kind of, your pessimism, I think, is well placed in that when we consider that all data is sort of considered equal or equivalent today. But there are very few organizations that are able to delineate between data types, for example. And I think that'll change over time. We'll start to see that, in the same way, like the early days of email, it was like very intimate to get an email from anyone in the early days of email. And then it started to become, over time, we started to understand that, an email doesn't really mean that much, and it depends on the content of it that started to affect our perception. And so I think there's just an increasing level of granularity that's coming to our understanding of data and data types, and that'll influence how that data is shared and which of it isn't, because not all of it should be. I mean, I don't want to come on the record here as someone who believes that companies should be sharing all data between each other. I mean, there are real ethical and privacy concerns to that. But the business benefits of sharing some of it are very material. And I think it speaks to a future where the average business is an ML company. They have an intelligence layer that's a core part of their stack. And as a result, they think about data agreements and data privacy, in a much more sophisticated lens than the average company does today.
Yeah. The application of ML is the true IP, not the ML itself. Let me quickly go to ask you about the future of ADA in the next 5 years. Whatever you're comfortable sharing, what's your view on expanding the platform capabilities, integrations, or transferring the technology to other areas beyond customer experiences? You obviously started doing a little bit of that already.
Yeah, we're so excited about seeing our brands use ADA to power many new types of conversations. Most of our brands initially use data to power customer service conversations in a post-sales capacity. And increasingly, especially with the launch of our new product, ADA Engage, our clients are using us to automate conversations with prospects too. And increasingly, we now have clients who are using us to automate conversations with their employees. And so ADA is really becoming a brand interaction platform that enables brands to automate interactions with every type of stakeholder they have, from their customer to their prospect to their employees. And again, that speaks to a unified intelligence layer that your organization has. And as a result, when that's unified, there are very interesting, not only business benefits that confers, but very, very material insights that an organization is able to surface by harmonizing those different data sets. And so that's increasingly where ADA is investing, and we've got so much exciting product that's coming out and then in the coming months and years ahead that's very much in service of facilitating that future.
I have one last question before I let you go. And we can let our audience continue with their busy days. You're passionate about helping youth, particularly underserved youth. You're passionate about helping them get entrepreneurial opportunities. Can you share with our audience what type of work you're doing with the Creative Destruction Lab and with VentureKids?
Sure. Yeah, I believe a lot in enabling people, especially young people, to have access to all the tools that the world does to solve problems. And I think we can kind of connect this to our conversation earlier. There's an inherent assumption that the tools are that tool access is evenly distributed. The reality is that it's not. And so I care a lot about enabling young people in particular with access to tech tools that allow them to solve problems in all the ways that are possible. So one organization that I've done some work with is VentureKids, who empowers young new Canadians primarily with access to tech resources, workshops, hardware, to both on the coding and entrepreneurial development side of things to solve really hard problems. And I think that's a really important initiative that's run by someone named Takara Small, who's a really wonderful entrepreneur in of herself. The other organization that I think highly of is the Creative Destruction Lab. Creative Destruction Lab provides access to tools in a slightly different way, really by connecting PhD, mainly researchers, with entrepreneurs. And it's sort of a melting pot of business-minded folk and scientific folk is one way to think about it. And there are some very exciting technology ventures that have come out of that melting pot that I love to play a small role in helping increase the success of. So it's worth checking out both Creative Destruction Lab and VentureKids for those that are interested. And there are, of course, many other organizations that I think have similar missions that are sort of equally deserve attention too. But those are two of the ones that I care a lot about.
So thank you so much for jumping on the call and for putting up with the technology challenges while we are fixing. We are learning on the job publicly,
sure,
yeah. And thanks for the audience for joining us and for being patient with us. Hopefully we didn't lose too many as they were waiting for the webinar to start. I hope everybody has a lovely day, and thanks again, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Bye.